is gonna be my well. I had a pilot recently for a live stream where I wanted to discuss some very important topics on AI progress and technology. But at the time, it didn't. It actually failed because people were letting me know in the chat that the audio wasn't coming through. So I had to end that recording, and which was actually a commentary React video to an interview with Imad from formerly from Stability AI, and I always forget his last name. What is his last name? Mostak. That's it. Imad Mostak. Imad Mostak. But anyway, today I woke up to a video of Senator. Is he still senator? Yes, U.S. Senator for Vermont, Bernie Sanders. And initially, I thought, wow, this could be really great because in the first few sentences, Senator Bernie Sanders actually says something that's so important, and I wish so many more politicians around the world would have actually touched on this topic, because he actually addresses artificial intelligence, right? And of course, we've seen President Donald Trump address artificial intelligence, and we've seen Ursula von der Leyen in the European Union address artificial intelligence in some way or another. But the truth is that if you, for example, look at the most recent Dutch elections, artificial intelligence or technology were simply not a part of the election. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was mentioning it. It was just like it didn't exist in terms of there was no conversation around it. No politicians mentioning it, bringing it up, considering it in any way apparently an important topic, even though artificial intelligence is the single most important topic for humanity in all of human history, if you ask me. And even if you disagree with me, then you still have to accept that if you listen to the scientists, if you listen to the tech companies, if you're seeing what's going on, if you are informed in even the most basic of ways when it comes to technological development and the impact that is going to result from AI, then there can be no other conclusion that this is one of the most important moments in human history in terms of technology, and it definitely should be high on the agenda for everybody. Now, of course, recently there's the rise of AI denial. People are calling a bubble and saying that it's not really going to pay off. But although I won't be going too deep in that today, I think that most of that is nonsense. I've written multiple articles about that, especially two in Dutch on the BusinessWise website. But I've also written one in my own newsletter on my LinkedIn called Man and Machine. And by the way, that's not sexist. I use man and machine with the word man referring to all of humanity, just to point it out, because I got some message from a feminist on that, which I thought was rather silly. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about Bernie Sanders and the speech that he gave, because although I was initially happy that a man of his stature, and I've always deeply respected Bernie Sanders. One of my friends calls him the best president that never was. And sometimes I do agree with that. I think he definitely is a traditional statesman, the like which we really don't get anymore these days when it comes to politics. But the thing is that although I was kind of happy at first to see that he was, making a statement on AI, it very soon turned completely sour for me. And the reason it turned sour for me is because ultimately the truth is that when I saw what Bernie Sanders was saying, when I listened to the whole thing, I was just deeply disappointed, because it seems that the only thing he wanted to say about AI is literally to reinforce all the prejudices, all the misconceptions, all the misinformation, basically everything that could possibly make you feel uncomfortable about AI. That's what Bernie Sanders talks about. And not a single time does he talk about any of the upside or the potential benefits for humanity or any of that. But before I do a whole review of the video, I just want to watch it together with you, or at least some part of it, and then I'm going to give a commentary. So let's go. Where is it? Here we go. Voila, Mr. Bernie Byrne. Can I? Cool.
Thanks very much for joining me today.
There's no sound. I am hearing no sound. Are you hearing any sound?
Thanks very much for joining me to discuss a
Oh, I did it again, didn't I? I was on the wrong mic. Oh my god. Okay, so I wonder if anybody was watching. If they were hearing me from very far away, and they probably told me in chat and I didn't notice. Oh my god. For somebody who's so deep into technology, it's really incredible how often I completely fail to use it appropriately. Yeah, but well, you know, it is what it is. It is working now. So we have audio. I'll just have to. Oh. Now I'm playing myself backward to my audience. I'm doing such a great job. Anyway, let's. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna have to keep doing this kind of thing, and then finally I'll get it all right, and I won't be messing up anymore. But here we go.
very important issue. Thanks very much for joining me to discuss a very important issue. Artificial intelligence and robotics will transform the world. It will bring unimaginable changes to our economy, our politics, warfare, foreign policy, our emotional well-being, our environment, and how we educate and raise our children. Further,
let's stop right there. I'm just gonna say it, man. This was the best part of it. This was the best part of Bernie Sanders' whole talk. Like, if I could, I would just stop right here, because that's everything you really needed to know, and that's everything you should have told the public. Because now, you know, there are different ways to go, right? Based on what he just said, this is an authoritative, respected politician, a global politician, a statesman with a reputation around the world, who just said, look, ladies and gentlemen, we need to start focusing on AI, right? So as I said before, when I was using the wrong microphone and people probably couldn't understand me properly, yes, Donald Trump has been talking about AI, and yes, he's in deep with the tech bros and all of that stuff. Yes, the European Union has made some statements on AI, and they're now, you know, well, still doing a horrible job of putting the EU on the map in any way. Let's not get into that. Xi Jinping, you know, the Chinese government is into AI, but the truth is that when it comes down to individual politicians that are not presidents or you know, anything like that, most of them are just completely oblivious, and they're not even touching AI, right? Like I said before, the Dutch elections, AI was not mentioned, not a single time, not by a single politician, nothing, nada, zip. And this is worrisome, because this is massive, right? But the thing is that it's massive, but there's massive potential. Yeah, there's massive potential, and unfortunately, that's not what we're going to see in the rest of this talk from Bernie Sanders. I'm going to continue. I'm going to let you see it, although I hate it. But yeah. You can, by the way, I just noticed you can already tell from the title of this speech, the threats from AI are real. The focus here is on danger, danger, danger. It's like Bernie Sanders is still a caveman, and he never learned to use his nugget. He didn't learn that we are human beings, that we have a brain, that we can interpret, that we can reason, that we can do logic, that we are more than just prey for saber-toothed targets, or in this case, artificial intelligence, right? But no, it has to be about the threats. It has to be about the dangers. It has to be only about that instinctual cognitive bias of risk. It's very unfortunate.
Unbelievable but true. There is a very real fear that in the not too distant future, a super intelligent AI could replace human beings in controlling the planet. That's not science fiction. That is a real fear that very knowledgeable people have.
Super intelligent AI. I mean, maybe this is not the right way to start about this, but let's just dissect that. A super intelligence, artificial intelligence. That's what he just said. The fact that man, who wrote this speech? Somebody should have realized that is a, what do we call that in English? It's pleonasme in Dutch. I don't know. Anyway, it's double. It's saying the same thing twice. But maybe that's not the important part. The thing is here, he calls it a fear, right? He calls it a fear. That's a very real fear. And by using the word fear, he kind of implies that it might not be true, maybe. He didn't call it a threat or a risk. He calls it a fear, which is an interesting choice of words. But then everything else he does seems to imply that it's not a fear, but that it's actually a threat. Right? And why did he choose this? Why, of all the things he could have said about AI, did he choose to say this? Why didn't he say very knowledgeable people think that we're heading towards a singularity where AI will drive technological progress and advance at such an incredible speed that we can't really comprehend what life will look like? Why didn't he, which would have been pretty neutral, right? Why didn't he say AI is driving medical breakthroughs that will make it possible to cure cancer within the next 10 years, which is very real? Why didn't he say artificial intelligence is finally allowing us to make significant progress in developing real fusion technology, which could lead to an absolutely abundant amount of energy, clean energy for the world with absolutely, with even less downsides than nuclear energy? Why didn't he say that? Why didn't he say any of that? Why didn't he at least say both? Why didn't he say, well, look, there's all this great stuff coming our way, but AI could also be dangerous? Why didn't he say that? I don't know.
Despite the extraordinary importance of this issue and the speed at which it is progressing, AI is getting far too little discussion in Congress, the media, and within the general population. And that has got to change now.
Well, I agree on that. I agree that there should be more conversation and awareness of AI. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, and I'll probably get loads of flack for this, but I am not a fan of democracy, and I'm certainly not a fan of the greater public. And yeah, this opens me up to so much criticism and flack. I understand, but look, I'm a historian, and I look at this through the lens of history. And in history, I simply cannot think of any situation where a significant, important technology was introduced, which positively would continue to change the world, that was invited or welcomed with open arms by the general public. There's no example, right? When electricity was introduced, people were scared and afraid of it initially, right? When trams were introduced in the Netherlands, public transportation, people didn't want to get on them because they believed that your body would be blown apart in bloody bits if you go faster than 40 kilometers an hour. When weaving dollies were introduced as a result of the steam engine, the Luddites rose up, or at least they weren't called Luddites. Well, they kind of were, under a man called Ned Ludd, who tried to burn all the weaving dollies, and they basically waged war for a decade on this new technology. When mobile phones came in the 90s, people didn't want them because they thought it was ridiculous and nobody needed to call them. And the internet was called a fad, and scientists said it would just die away. Like, there's literally no example of an incredible new technology being introduced where people were happy about it, welcoming it, and saying, oh, this is going to be great for humanity. And if anything, they were hesitant, they were afraid, they were scared, and very often they were even literally directly opposed and did anything they could, at least some part of the population would do anything they could to actually stop it. And there's a great example in very recent history where this happened. Nuclear energy got completely sidelined in the 80s because of mass global hysteria, because people couldn't understand the difference between a nuclear power reactor and a nuclear bomb. Right? Climate change today, if anything, is a direct result of those people who were most adamant about wanting to defend the environment and Mother Earth against it. Because they basically made sure that the only technology that was there ready to replace coal and oil to power the world in what can only, which was by any standard, 1,000,000 times cleaner and 1,000,000 times safer than anything else we had, they completely sidelined it because they believed it was dangerous. Why? Because they didn't understand what they were talking about, right? Why? Because it was new technology they didn't understand. That's why. And this happens time and time again. And if there's anything that I'm afraid of, it's not of a super intelligence killing humanity. What I'm afraid of is that there's going to be another mob that are going to decide that AI is dangerous. And they're going to go out into the streets and they're going to protest it. And they're going to convince politicians around the world to ban it, to stop it, or to do all kinds of weird things. And at the end of the day, all it's going to do is it's going to delay the inevitable, and it's going to cost a lot of lives, right? Because when that happens, all the benefits that we could be reaping from AI that could help humanity forward, that could cure cancers and other diseases, that could allow us to be the first species on this planet to escape the survival, basically the survival threshold, right? Which humans are the only species on Earth that have been slightly living above the survival threshold now for a few thousand years, right? Basically, every other species is just surviving. Well, maybe not dogs and grains, because both dogs, grains, and cats, I guess, as well, they have benefited from humanity. They became our partners, and they have benefited massively. I mean, there's more dogs in the world today than there's ever been, right? There's definitely 1,000,000 times more dogs than there's ever been wolves, if I were to guess. So, but, right? But all this benefit is going to be sidelined, right? Because of this. Because people like Bernie Sanders can only see the danger. They cannot see the upside. They can only see the danger, and they choose to emphasize that, drive the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's horrible. It's killing me. It's absolutely killing me.
Several months ago, as the ranking member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, I undertook an investigation regarding the monumental challenges that we face with the rapid development of artificial intelligence. And very recently, I held a public discussion at Georgetown University with Nobel Prize winner Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, considered to be the godfather of AI, the guy who really brought this subject to the place that it is now, to get his views on a wide range of AI-related subjects. Based on our investigation.
Now, this is important to mention here, by the way, because Geoffrey Hinton, I respect Geoffrey Hinton incredibly, but of all the AI scientists in the world, Geoffrey Hinton is the most prominent and most vocal doomer, right? Geoffrey Hinton was at the foundation. He was he is part of the creation of large language models. He basically kind of started that field in the 80s, studying under Marvin Minsky. And even Marvin Minsky told him, by the way, Marvin Minsky is one of the greatest AI minds in history. Marvin Minsky told Geoffrey Hinton basically, like, dude, you're a young man. Don't waste your time on neural networks. Don't waste your time on large language models. It's never going to work. And Geoffrey Hinton said, well, dude, I think there's some real potential here. So the irony there is that when Geoffrey Hinton was young, he was optimistic, he was idealistic, and he went for it, and he basically laid the foundation for what is now modern artificial intelligence. The current artificial intelligence revolution could only take place in a very real sense because Geoffrey Hinton ignored Marvin Minsky's warnings and negativity and pessimism. And now Geoffrey Hinton has come full circle. He's an old man. And now he's convinced that AI is going to kill us all. But when you look at the young people in the world, the new Jeffrey Hintons, the Jeffrey Hintons of the 2020s, 2030s, 2020s, they're not pessimistic at all. If you look at Ilya Sutskever, right? If you look at Alex Wang, if you look at what's his name, Yamamoto Hiro, I forgot his name now, from Enactic. These are all super optimistic people. They're young, great minds in this field, and they're optimistic, just like Jeffrey Hinton was in the 80s. Yet, Mr. Bernie Sanders decided to speak to the old geriatrics and the doomers. And he specifically mentions those. Why didn't he talk to any of the young people that are optimistic? The young people that he has been, campaigning for decades. Like when he was running for president, he was fighting for a future for young people because, young people can't buy a house and everything's going to shit. And he wanted to push back on that because, the rich and the tech are destroying the world and young people need a chance. But when it comes down to it, when it's about AI, when it's about the single most important technology that could literally liberate humanity from the shackles of 9-to-5 life, where your only value in life is determined by your economic value in the capitalist economy. When that comes knocking, Mr. Bernie Sanders is like, oh, no. Oh, we don't want that. Let's listen to the most negative voices out there when it comes to AI and focus only on the threats. It's killing me.
And other information that we are gathering, my staff and I will soon be presenting a very specific set of recommendations to Congress as to how we can begin addressing some of the unprecedented threats.
They're gonna offer recommendations on how they can start to address some of the unprecedented threats. Why doesn't he mention the unprecedented opportunities? Like, there's never been an opportunity like this where we could, on the horizon, in the lifetime of the current people, well, not Bernie, he's not going to be around probably, but I am, right? The majority of young people in the US is going to be around for this. Why aren't they giving any recommendations on how AI could be used to provide universal healthcare in the US within 15 years? Why is he not giving any recommendations on how AI could be used to basically free people from forced labor? Because if you have to work in the US, it's technically forced labor, let's be honest, right? Because if you don't work hard, if you don't work 5 jobs, most people can't even get around, right? They can't even pay rent. So how is that not modern slavery, right? Nobody wants to say this because, especially America is a land of opportunity and capitalism is amazing. And nobody's allowed to even criticize capitalism anymore and even consider there might be alternatives, because then you're going to be called a communist, right? And look, don't get me wrong. I understand the merits of capitalism, right? And it has done a lot for the world. I'm never going to dispute that. And communism, I don't believe in communism either. But the idea that the world is either capitalist or communist and there's nothing else, no other systems, nothing is possible. Like, is the universe really this black and white? Are we really at the end of time? Is the human form, Homo sapiens, the end of evolution? Is 2025 the end of history? Is democracy the goal and end all of all political societal systems? And is capitalism the only economic system that can ever function? Come on, ladies and gentlemen. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous to think that. We have 1 million years of human history behind us. Yes, 1 million, not 200,000 like we used to believe. Homo sapiens has been around for 1 million years. And in those 1 million years, the vast majority of time, we did not live under capitalism. And I know that, people that believe in capitalism will say, well, but it's only because of capitalism that in the last 400 years we've made such progress. No, it was not capitalism. It was a scientific method that allowed that. And that's not to say that capitalism didn't do its part. But the idea that there can ever only be capitalism and that's the only way to move forward is ridiculous. We can move beyond that. There is some kind of future out there, potentially, and it can only be, if you ask me, be realized through artificial intelligence. That is a Star Trek-esque world where there is no money. when I was listening to Peter Diamandis' podcast Moonshots this week with his team of experts, and Imad Mostaq was there as well, they talked not about universal basic income and not like Elon Musk about universal basic high income. They talked about things like universal basic services or universal basic abundance. And I think that that was the first time that I heard anybody talk about it in a way that started to go somewhere, where people were actually developing ideas about this in a new and novel way. That was opening up doors to seeing what the future could potentially look like, that was not directly limited and framed by the idea that, you know, by our lack of imagination because of living under capitalist economies and democracies for the last, you know, let's say 2,000 years, which is not exactly the right number, but, you know, give or take, these systems have been around like that long. I mean, yes, for the majority of the last 2,000 years, we lived under monarchs and kingdoms and warlords, and most people were not free, not living democracies, and certainly not specifically capitalism. But there were monetary systems, and most of it was about, you know, the exchange of trust through the exchange of value, which is kind of the foundation for capitalism, obviously, and scarcity. It's very important there. But we can now move beyond that. We can move beyond this, and yet the most socialist, you know, politician and statesman in the US decides to make a speech where he focuses solely on the threats of AI, and completely ignores the fact that it also presents the biggest and most serious opportunity and possibility for him to actually realize all of his dreams for the United States and its people and the people of the world. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Like, did he only speak to Jeffrey Hinton, I wonder?
That AI poses. Here are just some of the outstanding questions that we intend to answer in our report. First, and maybe most importantly, who should be in charge of the transformation into an AI world? Currently, a handful of the very wealthiest people on earth, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, and others, are investing many, many hundreds of billions of dollars in developing and implementing AI and robotics. Are we comfortable with seeing these enormously powerful men, handful of people, shape the future of humanity without any democratic input or oversight? Is the goal of the AI revolution simply to make the very, very richest people on earth even richer and even more powerful? Or will this revolutionary technology be utilized to benefit all of humanity?
Okay, so this is actually one of the first times, or maybe, well, no, this is actually the first time that he mentions the word benefit. Just be aware of this. We're now 3 minutes into a 15-minute video, and yeah, I've been ranting for a very long time, I know, but this is the first time he actually mentioned the word benefit, right? And the only reason he mentions it is because he wants to create this juxtaposition against that it's either we benefit from AI or the rich tech bros get richer. I don't know, man. I'm sorry, Mr. Bernie Sanders, but it seems to me that the only reason we even have access to this technology today, that it was even created, is because of the rich tech bros. Because believe it or not, Jeffrey Hinton worked at Google, right? It was Google that made it possible for him to develop his stuff. And it was Google that eventually invented the transformer model, which formed the foundation for ChatGPT. And Google just had it sitting on the shelf. That's the truth. Right? They weren't even doing anything with it. And the only reason they did something with it is because the OpenAI came around. And guess who founded OpenAI? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk. And you may say and believe whatever you want about Elon Musk. And yes, he left OpenAI because he had a dispute with Sam Altman and whatever. But without these people, we wouldn't even have this technology. It simply wouldn't exist. Nobody would have created it, and it would have never been made to scale. Right? So it's look, I'm not saying that all the tech bros are reliable and great people, right? And I'm not saying that we should have a system where these people get to hoard massive amounts of wealth. Although I must admit, I do understand Elon Musk's kind of mindset better than most, I think. And I'm pretty sure that he would give away the entirety of his wealth if he thought that that would be to the benefit of humanity, and if he thought that it would be used wisely by people to actually better life on Earth for everybody. I simply think that he thinks, like I do, that that is very unlikely to happen, because most people, and again, this may sound super arrogant, most people are simply not really able to comprehend, what is going on in the world, where things are headed, what lies beyond the, the future, maybe a week from now. The majority of people are simply completely unfit to understand the times we're living in and what's going on, right? Just like I said before, when the weaving dollies came around and the steam engine was invented, people in the UK took to the streets. They were later called the Luddites, because they started destroying the steam-driven weaving dollies because they didn't want progress to happen, because they thought it was just going to cost them their jobs. They couldn't comprehend that, just a few years down the line, the cost, for example, for clothing would come down significantly, allowing everybody and anybody to have decent, proper clothing affordably, of a much higher quality. So the whole standard of living was raised as a result of the progress and technological uplift of the textile industry, as a result of the steam engine and weaving dollies. Yet all these people could see when it was coming was, oh, we're losing our jobs because now there's a machine doing it, and we need to destroy these machines. And this is how people look at the world. And look, you cannot convince me, because there's simply no historical precedent or proof for this, that without people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and even Bill Gates and all of these people, that we would be in the place where we are. It is like who made it possible for us to listen to music, right? And this is straight from the book from my business partner, Patrick Willer. It's called Waves of Abundance. It was Edison, right? It was the great inventor, but more importantly, the great businessman Edison, because people seem to not know any of this history properly, but Tesla was the greatest inventor, I would argue, maybe of all time. Edison was a far less accomplished inventor, but he was a far better businessman. And it is for that reason alone that in today's world, we remember Edison better than we remember Tesla, although in recent years that has changed slightly. But Edison was wealthy. Edison made significant changes with his inventions, and basically Tesla ended destitute, right? And now we look back on it and we say, well, look, a lot of Tesla's inventions were really, really important, and they did change the world, and we did implement this. But what more could have been achieved if Tesla had been a slightly better salesman, a slightly better businessman? And so when we look at the Jeff Bezos of this world, when we look at the Elon Musks of this world, when we look at these people that are so hated universally for the fact that they are wealthy and rich, we seem to forget that the reason that they got there is because we all voted for a capitalistic system in a democratic world in the West. We wanted this system, right? And then on top of that, they just did what they do. And they changed our world and our lives for the better. Elon Musk has created Starlink, which has allowed internet to reach every corner of the globe. He's given it for free in basically every bad situation, every natural disaster that's been going on around the world. Elon Musk has provided Starlink for free, right? He's created Neuralink, which has allowed quadriplegic people to use their minds to control computers and to regain some, a level of autonomy and some level of control and a massive level of living comfort and pleasure. And he's only going to increase on that. He's brought the price of going to space down by more than 15x and continues to bring it down further, meaning that in the very near future, we're going to be mining asteroids instead of planet Earth, which will be good for the environment, which will be good for people in Africa. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And Jeff Bezos with Amazon, I mean, look, I'm not saying that all of it is great. I just want to emphasize this. Sure, there's bad sides to all of it. And sure, we could argue that, none of these people should have the massive amounts of wealth that they have. But the reason that this came into existence is not because they have been trying to scam all of us. It's because we created a system, all of us together, all of us people who voted, that allowed the system to work like this. And this is exactly why I don't think the people should be actively involved in deciding on the future of AI. Because then we're going to get the same thing, right? They're going to make really, really bad decisions that lead to systems that have really bad potential outcomes. And why? Because people are not capable of seeing the real end result of their short-term choices, which are usually grounded in fear. Anyway, another long rant. Let's continue.
Is the question, who benefits from this incredible transformation of society? Why does Donald Trump, who is strongly supporting these big tech oligarchs, want to impose an executive order blocking states from regulating AI? Why does Peter Thiel, the billionaire investor and co-founder of Palantir, call those who want regulations over AI, quote, legionnaires of the Antichrist, end quote?
Okay, so first of all, I don't trust Trump. I mean, this man is clearly only out to benefit himself and to enrich himself. And unlike Elon Musk, and unlike Jeff Bezos, and unlike Bill Gates, and unlike Mark Zuckerberg, and unlike any of the tech CEOs, billionaires, Trump has done nothing to make this world a better place. Let's be absolutely 100% clear about that. And I know that this will get me loads of flack from the conservative voters that absolutely believe in Trump in the US, but I don't care. Show me one significant thing that Trump has done for the world, right? That has only benefited humanity, that has created new industries, created new jobs, created new opportunities, created new wealth. Nothing. The man is an absolute business disaster as well. He's only been enriching himself as a president, and that's a fact. And the only reason that I'm happy that Trump is president is because I think that the alternatives for the Democratic Party in the last U.S. elections was even worse. But that would be a completely different episode to discuss that. Fact is that I don't like Trump. So, and him trying to pass bills to kind of allow no regulation of AI, I don't think that's a good thing. I think there should be some regulation of AI, obviously, right? I just think that it should be created and done by people that actually understand this, right? Rather than either doomers like Bernie Sanders or people that, well, like Trump. And then as for Peter Thiel, I don't know, man. This man, yeah. I'm trying to understand him, and I haven't been able to yet. I've been listening to a lot of interviews with him. He seems to have some really interesting, or maybe I should say, worrisome worldviews. I'm not entirely sure where he sits and how I should judge that.
Does this elite group of multi-billionaire big tech guys really believe that they have the divine right to rule? Are we going back to the 19th century where you had in those days kings and monarchs saying God gave them the right to rule? Is that what these guys are saying today? How far will they go to resist government regulation? So
it's interesting what he says here, because he ultimately implies that any type of monarchy is worse than any type of leadership with authoritarian or stronger leadership, or leadership vested in kind of not a democratic system, but anything other than that, is by definition bad. And I don't believe that, right? I think that the only issue with monarchies potentially being dangerous is not that there's a single person making the decisions. Is that with human monarchs, we basically always had the, well, let's say, throw of the dice risk that any potential monarch is simply an evil, egoistic piece of shit. Apologies for the bad language. I hope they don't ban me on YouTube now. But some people are just bad people, right? That's a problem with a monarchy. If we could guarantee that monarchs or leaders always had the best interest of humanity at heart, right, then there would be no problem. And in fact, it would be the better system, because the problem with democracy is that nobody can ever agree on anything. And as we've seen so far, exactly as predicted by Aristotle and Plato, every single democracy ultimately fails because it basically caves in on itself, right? That's another whole episode there. You go into Karl Popper, you go into Plato's own writings, you go into Aristotle, read the Republic. None of these people believe in democracy. And Plato is called the father of democracy. He didn't even believe in democracy, right? Because it ultimately always leads to bad stuff happening. And that's the interesting thing. Greek democracy wasn't even democracy as we know it today, because only citizens could vote. And citizens were only like 10% of the population in the ancient, in ancient Athens or the Greek city-states. Today, everybody can vote, right? And honestly, I don't know about you, but very often I see videos of people that have the right to vote. I don't even think they should have the right to ride a bicycle. And this is not something that is popular to say. And, we're living in these times where people will get massively offended by this. But honestly, if you think that you're a furry, right, and you want to go outside with somebody where you're crawling on your knees and they're holding a leash, and I don't think you should have the right to vote. I'm sorry. I think that there's something wrong with you. And if I'm not allowed to say that, well, I think that in itself is a problem. And this is now coming back. I know this went a little sideways political, but this is why I think that Donald Trump was the least bad of two really bad choices when it came to the latest U.S. elections. Because Bernie and his party, they believe that people that go outside like furries and crawl on the floor with a leash on for other people should have the right to vote. All right. Sounds like a great idea.
That's one huge issue that we've got to get deeply involved in. Further, what impact will AI and robotics have on our economy and the lives of working people? The report that I released last month found that AI, automation, and robotics could replace nearly 100 million jobs in America over the next decade, including 40% of registered nurses, 47% of truck drivers, 64% of accountants, 65% of teaching assistants, and 89% of fast food workers, among many other occupations that will be hit hard.
That sounds horrible, because people love being fast food delivery people. People love working at McDonald's. I'm sure that all of these people are absolutely shattered by the idea that they will one day not have to work, and that they might just receive universal basic income or something like that when AI and robotics take over. But that's not what he said, is it? No, that's not what he said.
By AI and robotics.
Evolution. They will be hit hard by AI and robotics. See, it's killing me, man. It's just killing me. That look at this guy. He's the only thing he can see is always going to cost jobs. It's like he can't even see beyond it. He just can't see beyond it. And he says he did this inquiry, and he said he did this research, and he said he spoke to all of these people. But at the end of the day, apparently he didn't speak to anybody, because if he had spoken, even if he'd there's plenty of people out there that could have told him about the potential upsides. So either he doesn't want to see it, or he simply didn't even make the effort to see it or to find out about it.
To make the very, very richest people on earth even richer and even more powerful.
Why is he not talking about the deflationary power of technology, right? Go to Jeff Bezos today. Go to Elon Musk. Ask them for their mobile phone. Tell me, is their mobile phone significantly better or worse than yours? No, it is not. Why? Because technology is extremely deflationary. And as technology gets more advanced, it becomes more deflationary, meaning that it becomes more democratic. Yes. And in this case, that is a very positive thing, I would argue, because it means that anybody can have access to the same kind of level of technology. Why do people in the US not have access to the same healthcare as people in Europe or people in Asia? Right? It's not because the technology doesn't allow it or because it isn't cheap enough. It's because the United States of America chose a system democratically, because they are the oldest democracy in the world. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they chose a system that says, people that can't afford it won't have access, and we're gonna allow pharmaceutical companies to make fucking ludicrous ludicrous amounts of money on developing treatments and medications before rolling it out to the public, and we're not going to create any system that allows anybody to partake in it. But the truth is that is not the problem. Is not the technology, because if you look at the cost of producing these medicines, they're extremely low, right? And the pharmaceutical companies claim, yeah, no, we need all the money for research and development. Okay, I'm not saying that research and development doesn't cost money, and it has. But that does not in any way justify the extreme profit margins that pharmaceuticals have been putting. Look at Ozempic. Novo Nordisk, a European company, went from being a small to mid-sized pharmaceutical company, and they used to be my client when I worked at LinkedIn, to being one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world in terms of revenue and profit margins. Why? Because they're selling Ozempic. And why are they so rich? Not because they're selling Ozempic in the Netherlands, right? Or in Europe. It's because they're selling Ozempic in the United States, where their profit margins are extremely high. So it's nothing to do with the technology. It's nothing to do with the access, right? Just like with mobile phones, anybody can have a good mobile phone. And as the same thing will apply to AI and robotics, the technology will be cheap, and the access to the top level of this technology will be cheap. Ultimately, when Elon Musk starts rolling out these robots, and other companies as well, like Figure, like X, like Unitree in China, they will be rolling out these robots by the millions. And as they roll these robots out by the millions, and people start buying them, as people start bringing them into their homes, and companies start buying them for the factories, prices will plummet. Prices will plummet. Right? You'll be able to buy one of these robots and AIs for the same price that you're buying an electric scooter or an e-bike today. Right? And the return on investment is going to be significantly higher, because your e-bike can only transport you somewhere, and you still need to move your legs. So it only works when you're on it. These robots will be able to work 24/7, do stuff for you. They will free you from having to work, free you from having to do household chores, allowing you to spend more time with your loved ones, spend time with your grandma who's getting old, or, go out with your kids and do stuff like that. And ultimately, they will replace us in the job market. Yes, they're going to replace all of these nurses. And that is a great thing, because these nurses are all, the healthcare system is overstressed. There's a lack of capacity. There's a lack of funding, at least in Europe, etc. And these nurses have no time to spend adequate amount of time socializing with people, right? Because they have to do all kinds of operational and administrative tasks. All of this is going to change because of AI and robotics. All of this is going to get better because of AI and robotics. But Mr. Bernie Sanders chooses to ignore all of that. He's just single-mindedly focused on all the downsides and rich people getting richer, which is his greatest fear in life. The same rich people that brought us these technologies, that brought us smartphones, that brought us the internet, that brought us Starlink, that brought us electronic vehicles, revolutionizing the industry, that brought us a 15x decrease in the cost of launching rockets into space and all the potential upside that comes with that.
Or will this revolutionary technology be utilized to benefit all of humanity? That is the question. Who benefits from this incredible transformation of society? Why does Donald Trump, who is strongly supporting these big tech oligarchs, want to impose an executive order of working people? The report that I released last month found that AI, automation, and robotics could replace nearly 100 million jobs in America over the next decade, including 40% of registered nurses, 47% of truck drivers, 64% of accountants, 65% of teaching assistants, and 89% of fast food workers, among many other occupations that will be hit hard by AI and robotics. Now, Elon Musk recently said that, quote, AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional, end quote. Bill Gates predicted that humans, quote, won't be needed for most things, end quote. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, warned that AI could
I hate to point this out because most people wouldn't even pay attention to this, but this is a small detail. The man's name is Dario Amodei, not Amodei. Dario Amodei. And if you are at all informed about what's going on in AI and paying any attention to any of this, you would know that. But Mr. Bernie Sanders does not, which tells me that he is just reading a script. He has no idea what he's talking about. And you might say, well, Aragorn, that's a long shot based on something so trivial. Yes, but it's always the small things. The devil is in the details.
Could lead to the loss of half of all entry-level white-collar jobs. If AI and robotics eliminate millions of jobs and create massive unemployment, how will people survive if they have no income? How do they feed their families or pay for housing or healthcare? Is government doing anything now to prepare for this potential economic disaster?
See, okay, and
Further,
he does it again here. So he could have finished his sentence as, is the government doing anything to prepare for this economic eventuality, right? Or prepare for this. And if he'd said it like that, he would have left the door open and implied that governments could work together to prepare for this future in a positive way. That they could make sure that if people have no jobs anymore, that they do not have to worry about their bread, about their basic needs, right? But instead, he chose again to finish the sentence on disaster. Disaster is not good, right? Disaster is bad by any definition. So again, he chooses. He's already chosen. He's already chosen to look at this through a lens and a framing that by definition leads to a negative outcome, right? If it is allowed. In his world, AI and robotics are by any definition, per definition, negative and bad for the future because he can't see outside of the world that he knows and that he's lived in. He cannot see past a world where people need a job and a 9-to-5 golden cage. Well, it's not a golden cage for most people. For most people, it's just a cage. Because that's the best that they can imagine. So this is what this is about more than anything, is a lack of imagination and and an absolute abundance of short-sightedness.
What impact will AI have on our democracy? At a time when the foundations of democracy are under attack here in the United States and throughout the world, will AI and robotics help make us become a freer, more democratic society? Or will it give even more power to the oligarchs who control the technology?
This is so interesting. What is freedom? We can have a long conversation about this. I don't have the time for it today, but what is freedom? Because I've come to understand in the recent years that we tell ourselves we have freedom in the West, but we don't. That's an absolute lie. What we have is we have rights. We have rights. And even those rights, what do they even mean? Because I have the right. I have a right to travel, right? Unless I come at the border and I don't bring my passport, then I lose my right. So how free am I really? Because I am dependent on my government to provide me with a passport, and then I need to show that passport to actually go across a border. And if I can't do either of those, and if the government denies me, I have no freedom. Right? So I don't have a freedom to begin with. I have a right. I have a dispensation to, and that goes for most things in life. We tell ourselves that we have freedom, but if you cannot afford to go on holiday, are you really free to go on holiday? No, you're not free to go on holiday, because if you were free to go on holiday, you could just go and it would be okay. If you were free to move or leave or do whatever you wanted, then you could just do it. But even right now in the European Union and in the Netherlands, they're already looking at how they can make sure that even if people leave the country, they still have to pay tax here for several years. How is that freedom? That has nothing to do with freedom. The idea that we are free in the West is an absolute and utter big bag of BS. And yet, our politicians and people online sit here and they say, oh, but China is bad, because in China you're not free, right? Now, I'm not going to say that China is an amazing place, although seemingly 15 million Chinese people go on holidays outside of China every year, and they come back home very happily. And although, yes, during the COVID lockdowns, etc., there's stuff in China going on that, maybe cannot be called great, but a lot of Chinese people are very happy with their lives. In fact, there's Chinese people alive today that were born in a world where they did not have running water, did not have electricity, they did not even have shoes. And they had to pull hand carts to work every day. That now live in a world that is super, super, super futuristic, with one app that allows them to call a cab that drives itself, to have deliveries made by drones, to order online, to live basically in every kind of luxury in cities where you don't even smell exhaust fumes anymore or hear cars, because everything is electrified. China is leading the world in green energy, solar, nuclear. It's leading the world in every kind of technology, even AI at this point, even though the Americans don't want to face that yet. And yet this is the place in the world we say, oh, people are not free there. We're fooling ourselves, and Bernie Sanders is fooling us and himself. We're not free. We're not free. As long as we live in the world as it is today, in a capitalist system, right? In a world where people have to work, and if any, you know what? The country where people are least free in the entire world is the United States of America. There, I said it. Because in the United States of America, most people need multiple jobs just to be able to pay rent, which means that they have no freedom at all. They have no freedom to do anything they like. They have no freedom to move anywhere. They have no freedom to go on holidays. They have no freedom to spend time with their loved ones, because they are literally slaves to their jobs as a result of their idea of freedom. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Will AI result in a massive invasion of our privacy and our civil liberties? Larry Ellison, the second richest person on earth, predicted an AI-powered surveillance state where, quote, citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that is going on, end of quote. This is the second wealthiest guy on earth, investing hundreds of billions in AI. Are we reaching the stage where every phone call that we make, every email and text that we send, every bit of research we do on the internet will be available to the owners of AI? And if that is the case.
Okay, so again here, he talks about the owners of AI, but apparently he wasn't informed at all. Because if he had been informed, he would know that the leading models in the world, or some of the leading models in the world, and for a very significant part, are actually open sourced. Yeah, they're Chinese, but they're open source, which means that you can take him, you can bring him home, you can run him on your own infrastructure. There's nobody that's owning that AI except you, right? And if Bernie Sanders had been informed, he would know that models and their capabilities are getting the capabilities are getting bigger, but a lot of models are getting smaller. The technology is very rapidly developing to a point where anybody can run an AI model. You could run it on a computer at home. You can run it on your laptop. You can, there's going to be, I guarantee you that within 5 years, AI will reach a level where you can run something that is, very close to AGI level in some ways, not always, but you can run it on your smartphone, which means that these companies will not be owning AI. There will be plenty of kind of open source freedom there for people to run with, which is a democratization of this technology in the same way that Android was a democratization for phone operating systems. Yeah, sure. Google does most of the development in Android. But Android in and of itself is not owned specifically. Well, maybe that's not the right way of phrasing it, but Android to a very large extent is open source. And there are many, there used to be a time when everybody could have their own version of Android on their phone if they wanted to. And technically that's still possible today, right? The only closed ecosystem that is, completely controlled by some egomaniac is Apple. So yeah, I don't know, man. Well, maybe that's not completely phrasing it correctly, obviously, because there's lots of technological dependencies with Google and Microsoft for a lot of companies and individuals. But the point I'm trying to make, I think, is that him pretending that AI is being owned by these big tech bros is just not giving us the whole picture. It is at best misleading, and it's also short-sighted, because this is not the future we're heading for, right? At least it's not a future I believe we're headed for, and it's definitely not the only future that is possible. Yet again, he chooses to focus only on the most negative potential scenario and outcome.
How do we sustain a democracy under those conditions? How do we protect our privacy? Further, could AI literally redefine, and this is almost crazy stuff, very unimaginable, but could AI literally redefine what it means to be a human being? Who we are and how we develop emotionally and intellectually is highly dependent upon our relationships with other human beings. Our parents, of course, our family, teachers, lovers, friends, and coworkers. To quote the 17th century poet John Donne, you'll remember this poem, quote, "No man is an island unto himself," end quote. The human beings with whom we interact help shape us to become, for better or for worse, the people we are. But AI is in the process of changing that. According to a recent poll by Common Sense Media, 72% of US teenagers say they have used AI for companionship, and more than half of them do so regularly. What does it mean? I want you to think about this. What does it mean for young people to form friendships?
Okay, let's stop right here. Look at this guy. Look at this geriatric, man. I'm so losing all respect for Bernie Sanders. Like, he's trying to sound neutral and objective, like, right? Because he says, just think about it. But look at him with his fingers going, quote unquote, friendships, pretending you could never be friends with an AI. Okay. Why? Sure, you can make the argument that AI today is not sentient. It's not conscious. It's not an individual on itself. So in that sense, you could say, well, how can you be a friend with that? But you could also approach it from a completely different angle. And you could say, well, look, in today's world, we're suffering from a massive pandemic of loneliness. Less children are being born than ever before in the Western world. Well, not in total numbers, but relatively to the total population. Right? Because in the West, we have a massive collapse of birth rate, right? This is Elon Musk's greatest worry, and some people say that it's overstated, but I think that there's some merit to Elon Musk's conviction that we should be having more children. But we're not, right? Japan is losing a million people a year. And we're living in a world where people people can't have friends because they have all these responsibilities and they live under greater economic pressure than ever before. Young people can't afford a home. They have to pay rent. They have to have 3 jobs, right? All of this is going on. And so people are lonely and they're looking for companionship. And AI is offering that. How is that bad? Like, and it's not just young people, it's old people as well. There's a loneliness pandemic in the Western world of old people, and in the East as well, by the way. And these people are finding companionship in AI. Well, how is that bad? I mean, it's not like, what's wrong with finding a solution to your loneliness? Why are we not allowed to have friendships with something that is not a human? We have friendships with dogs and cats. How is AI suddenly bad? This is geriatric prejudice of somebody that is living in a world he no longer understands, and he just can't grasp it. He can't grasp it. That is what we're seeing here. And he's trying to be objective, but he already made up his mind.
With AI and become increasingly isolated from other human beings, spend an enormous amount of time.
See, again, he didn't mention how if nurses actually don't have to do administrative work anymore, if nurses don't have to do operational tasks anymore in a hospital, that these humans, these nurses, could actually spend time with other human beings, basically making it non-necessary for elderly people to, for example, have AI as a companion. He didn't mention how if all of these fast food workers don't have to go to work every day anymore, they could actually spend time with their kids or with their friends. He didn't mention any of that. No, instead he chooses to pretend that that is all bad. But now when it comes to AI and people having a relationship with a companion that they can always kind of spend time with, even if they're on the bus to work, even if they're in the car to work, even, you know, if it's late at night when they come home exhausted and they just want to talk to somebody or someone that's available, then no, that's bad. That's bad. That's really bad. Look, I'm not saying that there aren't some really bad potential scenarios with AI if it's being controlled, for example, by big tech companies, and they would get the same way as Meta, you know, did with using Facebook data. And certainly there are caveats. 100%. I'm not denying any of that. And we should take care of those and we should address those. But to pretend that humans finding some solace or companionship in AI is per definition bad, and that AI replacing people's jobs is bad, is just a monumental lack of imagination and understanding of the potential here.
On their screens, talking to AI characters. What happens when millions?
You know that most AI have an IQ of, at this point already, of over 120, right? The majority of people on planet Earth have a majority of under 100, which means that if you're talking to an AI as a companion, you're actually always uplifting yourself, because you're always talking to somebody that is to some extent more intelligent and insightful than you and has more knowledge of the world than you. And sure, there are dangers to that, but let's say that we have 2 people and one only has friends with an IQ of under 100 that are not well educated, that smoke weed or I don't know whatever, make bad decisions in life. And we have another kid exactly the same, a copy, let's say a clone. It's a twin, and this person only talks to AI, which has an IQ of anywhere between 100 and 136 at this point, and access to all the knowledge of the world and the internet. Who do you think is going to be better off? Who's going to be more capable? Who will be more motivated in developing their own cognition and their intellect and their knowledge? Which of the 2 will be better off in the world? What do you think? If both, you could argue maybe, the one with the bad friends might develop more social skills, which I highly doubt from experience, not my own, people around me. But, I'd much rather have my kid talk to an AI at this point. Not gonna lie, especially in the United States of America.
Around the world, seek emotional support from a machine.
Emotional support from a machine. Yes, Mr. Bernie Sanders, because you know what? Research has shown that AI is better capable of empathy, or at least giving you the feeling that there's empathy, that somebody actually understands you, that actually cares about you, and actually listens to you than most humans. And that is also a fact.
What is the long-term impact upon our humanity when our most important relationships are not with other human beings?
I don't know, Mr. Bernie Sanders, but I have a newsflash for you. Our most important relationships have not been with human beings for a while, because for the majority of people on this earth, our most important relationships are actually with our pets. Okay, maybe that's an overstatement. Okay, I'll take it back. I take it back. A lot of people, their most important relationships are with humans, but for a lot of human beings, our most important relationships are with animals. And in fact, if you go back in human history, I think that for the majority of human existence, well, let's see, how long ago did we start living with wolves? I think that was, we should probably check that, because I think it's 17,000 years off the top of my head, something like that. Double check, double check. When did humans domesticate wolves and other pets?
Humans likely domesticated wolves between about 40,000 and 15,000 years ago, and the dog was the first species to be domesticated. Other pets, like sheep and goats, were domesticated roughly 11,000 years ago, and cats became pets around 7,000 BC.
See, this is my AI friend. Now imagine having some friend who's just smoking weed on the couch playing on a PlayStation because he's jobless. Which one would you prefer? Right? Okay, so I was wrong. It wasn't 17,000 years ago. It was 40,000 for wolves, but it was, around 17,000. I think she said 11,000 for goats and such. So I wasn't too far off. I mean, at the scale, in the scheme of things. But that means that for the last, so for the last 0.1% or for the majority of our recent history of civilization, we've had a lot of very important relationships with creatures, intelligences, even though they're less intelligent than humans, that were not human beings. And these were very, very important relations we had. Wolves kept us safe. We kept them safe, right? We lived together. So why does it have to be different with AI? Why is it per definition bad?
Further, what impact is AI having on our environment?
Well, Mr. Bernie Sanders, I can answer that question for you. AI is actually driving the transition to sustainable energy faster than anything has ever before. It's because of AI and algorithms that solar power has become more efficient by 1,000,000 times over the last few years. And I expect to see much bigger impact from modern AI models to follow in the years to come. It is due to AI that fusion technology has leaped forwards by decades, if not centuries, which is opening up a path to real clean, 100% clean, sustainable energy production at a scale never seen before, Mr. Bernie Sanders. Yes, so AI is driving an efficiency increase in the world for basically everything you can think of that will significantly reduce our carbon footprint, Mr. Bernie Sanders. But I'm sure that you didn't actually consider any of this because nobody told you, because you didn't ask.
AI data centers require a massive...
Oh, here we go with the AI data centers. Yeah. Mr. Bernie Sanders, you need to go back to school and you need to learn some basic calculation and considering of all aspects of a conversation. AI data centers are not the whole story, right? The cost of an AI data center should not be judged basically only on its expenditure of energy and usage of water. It should be judged in the context of the return on investment from the models being run on it. If AI data centers allow us to create a super intelligence that then basically makes it possible for us to completely leave behind coal and oil and gas as means of energy production, right? If it makes it possible for us to basically reprogram matter and therefore go into a new economy that is based on 100% recycling and 3D printing, and these are all very realistic technologies and possibilities. I mean, even Gartner has programmable matter on their technology timeline for the next 30 years, right? If we would consider this, Mr. Bernie Sanders, then AI is literally the single most important decision and technology to move forward and to make the world green and sustainable. But that didn't fit your agenda, apparently, or wasn't worth your attention.
Huge amount of electricity and water. A relatively small AI data center can consume more electricity than 80,000 homes, a large one, like the 165.
Yes, and in 10 years' time, it won't consume any energy because it will have basically fixed that for itself, right? Whereas if we would ban AI now, we will be spending that amount of energy on 80,000 homes for the rest of eternity, completely destroying this planet.
$5 billion data center that OpenAI and Oracle are building in Abilene, Texas, will use as much electricity as 750,000 homes, one data center. Meta is building a data center in Louisiana, the size of Manhattan, that will use as much electricity as 1,200,000 homes. In community after community, Americans are fighting back against data centers being built by some of the largest and most powerful.
Americans are fighting to remain or go back to the dark ages. Why? Because politicians like Bernie Sanders are not telling them the truth about what's coming and what's possible. They're telling them what they think are the dangers and what they are focused on as the potential risks, because they lack they completely and absolutely lack any sign of imagination and any kind of vision. Period.
Powerful corporations in the world. They are opposing the destruction of their local environment, soaring electric bills, and the diversion of.
Yes, because you know what? We should not be building data centers. We should be building shopping malls where we can have more fast food restaurants so that more people can work in a job where they eat food that basically gives them cancer, makes them obese, and increases their chances of health problems, which are not paid for in the United States, leaving them destitute and in misery and pain for the rest of their lives, because that will be way better than building a data center that can actually support the infrastructure and technology that will allow us to kind of move forward and improve the wealth and well-being of humanity, and might help us actually solve our environmental problems in the near future. Yes, Mr. Bernie Sanders, you are such a great visionary. My God, I'm starting to hate this man the longer I watch this video.
Of scarce water supplies. Nationally, how will continued construction of AI data centers impact our environment? Further, how will AI and robotics impact foreign policy and warfare? Well, maybe you haven't thought about that. But the reality is that, sadly, tragically, in the midst of the 21st century, governments have not yet created a mechanism for solving international or internal disputes without armed conflict. We're seeing terrible.
Well, here's an idea. What if we created superintelligence that makes sure that the benefit of humanity is always at the forefront, and that negotiates between governments and has the capability of applying whatever it is best for all humans, saves the most lives, creates the most freedom for all human beings? What? How about that? A neutral party that is not a human being and therefore not subject to any of our tribal primal instincts. How would that be? Could that be a potential future, Mr. Bernie Sanders? Look, I'm not saying that this is the only future that's possible, but it is a potential future, isn't it? Like, if anybody reads E&M Banks, because you can read lots of science fiction, and this is where we're headed. We're heading into the age of science fiction made real. If you read E&M Banks, people live in a kind of utopian world where AIs basically take care of all the all the administration, all the diplomacy, all the politics, all the stuff that makes human life hard and terrible at times. And sure, humans can still participate in it if they want, but there's AIs to kind of take care of that stuff. They are our guardians, they are our shepherds, and that is a potential future we could head to, right? And we could be part of that. And if we even merge with AI, we can become a completely different species. No longer just Homo sapiens, the basically naked ape, which is still so fundamentally primitive in so many ways. We could actually outgrow that. But no, Mr. Bernie Sanders is only seeing danger and is only seeing bad stuff.
Terrible wars taking place right now. Nonetheless, government leaders are often hesitant about going to war because of their fear of public reaction to the loss of life. No politician wants to go before his or her people and say, oh, sorry, we've lost thousands of dollars of young men and women. But what happens when you have robots replacing human beings in the act of warfare? When you have robot armies, what does the future look like if millions of robot soldiers replace human beings?
Well, actually, this is a very good point he's making. I'll have to admit that. And this is something that, for example, Japan has been thinking about for decades. If you look at any Japanese anime like Gundam, right, these futuristic science fiction animes, because anime is not just a cartoon or a comic. Well, those are manga based technically, by the way. If you in Japanese, comics are manga, and then anime is basically the television cartoons. But they're not cartoons; they are art. For the Japanese, creating an anime it's much more akin to creating a movie with a social commentary that reflects on the state of the world. And they're using science fiction, for example, or magic to express ideas of power play, etc., etc. And so when you look at Japanese anime and manga, for example, the Gundam Wing series, it's always been about the core question is always, what is the role of a human in a future technological world where humans could basically be replaced by machines? And should we do that? And what are the moral implications of this? And so this is a very relevant and important topic. And Mr. Bernie Sanders, for this particular topic, is right. I am not sure we should be replacing soldiers with robots. And of course, the advocates of this, like for example, Lucky Palmer, the founder of Anduril and the former founder of Oculus VR, he will say, well, look, it will save millions of soldiers their lives if we send a robot instead. If we can send a robot instead of a US soldier, that will save potentially the life of a US soldier. But what Bernie Sanders here is alluding at, and this is important, is that if you send robot soldiers, then these are, then there is no hesitation to send them. You can go to any place in the world and say, well, this country needs some freedom. And you just send your robot soldiers. And then you won't lose any soldiers. But that country, depending on their own level of sophistication, technological sophistication, and access to modern technologies, might not have robot soldiers of its own. And therefore, they will have to send in human soldiers, which will then get annihilated by robots. So the losses will be massive. They'll just be one-sided. And so an American politician would not have to come home and say, well, look, we lost 100,000 soldiers in this war. And because they don't have to do that, they're scrupulous. Their hesitation in going to war would become less. And this is, I agree with Senator Sanders. This is kind of dystopic potential future. And it is for this reason that I've also always believed that humans should always be a part of warfare. Now, I'm not a fan of loss of life. And I certainly hope I don't get sent to the front lines anytime soon, because I want to live for another 200, 300 years, because that's a future I foresee for humanity if we can make it through the next decade. But creating robot soldiers might be a very stupid decision. Very likely.
Will leaders be more likely to engage in war or threaten military action if they don't have to worry about loss of life? Will there be literally an arms race in robots? So you can see country fighting country, not with their own human beings, not with their own soldiers, but with robots. And if you don't have to worry about losing robots as opposed to losing human beings, how will this shape foreign policies around the world? It's a big issue. Doesn't get a lot of discussion. Further, and needless to say, of some consequence, is AI an existential threat to human control over the planet? Now, some of us remember the scene. I know there have been different movies making the same point, but some of us remember that scene in that great 1968 science fiction film, 2001, A Space Odyssey.
I don't even know where to begin. Look, I love I love science fiction movies, right? I do. And I think that science fiction movies and books, and usually the great movies are based on books, should be considered valuable input into understanding the potential of the future, both negative and positive. But for Mr. Bernie Sanders to bring up a 1968 movie, I mean, come on. This is 2025. The vast majority of young people to whom this is most significant and important for their lives, they were born after the year 2000, or at least in the 90s. And he's talking about a 1968 movie. These people haven't even seen this movie. So that in and of itself already shows, that we're talking, that this is a relic here. Mr. Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, is a relic, a geriatric talking about AI, which in and of itself should worry us. But then, like, every AI scientist you can talk to will tell you that you should not look at movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey or The Terminator to get an understanding of what AI will be like. It's never going to be like that. If we actually get a super intelligence, and that super intelligence wants us to be gone, and I kid you not, we will just disappear overnight. Literally one day we'll wake up, we'll walk to the kitchen, and then we'll all drop dead. That's literally how it's going to go, if that is ever going to happen. Now, I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm also not saying that it's likely to happen. But the idea that there will be some kind of AI in a spaceship that will suddenly start playing games with us like we're in a horror movie and there's a ghost is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it speaks to the absolute lack of understanding that this man has of what he's talking about.
In which HAL, the super intelligent computer that controls...
No, HAL 2000 is not a super intelligent computer, bro. You have no idea what you're talking about. HAL 2000, at best, is maybe an AGI that controls the ship, right? So at best, it's like a human level, evil, insidious pilot with no physical body. It is not a super intelligence, and there's no comparison to be made here.
The spaceship rebels against its human masters. Today, as AI makes rapid progress, Dr. Jeffrey Hinton recently told me...
Okay, another thing. He doesn't explain here why HAL 2000 rebels in the movie, does he? No. He conveniently forgets to mention that the AI in the movie rebels because it was giving a very strong directive. And the directive was given to it by who? Humans. Yes, humans. It doesn't rebel because it just suddenly decided that humans were bad. It rebels because it has a core directive. And the reason it has a core directive that it is trying to follow, for which it is trying to do everything it can to follow, is because that is an AI that is envisioned in a time where we didn't understand that an artificial intelligence wouldn't be the same as a computer. Right? Even today, we already understand that the artificial intelligence that we're creating, although the alignment problem, as it is called, is very real. So aligning AI's intentions and motivations with the best, with humanity to make sure that it does everything in our best interest. That is called the alignment problem. This is real, right? But it is the problem there is that we don't fully understand how AI comes to decisions, but we have already moved past the idea that AI is simply following a directive like it is a computer, and therefore it misinterprets what we say because it follows as a very, very strict logical path. And through absolute logic, it comes to a conclusion that is opposite to our best interest. Because that's what happens in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? And that's not the reality of AI today. Like, I could do the whole episode on this alone, but anyway.
That it was only a matter of time before AI becomes smarter.
Let's go
before back. AI becomes a matter of time. Dr. Jeffrey Hinton recently told me that it was only a matter of time before AI becomes smarter than human beings.
In many ways, AI is already smarter than human beings. But again, apparently his only source for any of this was Jeffrey Hinton, which is worrisome to say the least, when there's, you know, 1 million AI scientists around the world right now. Look, I understand he didn't ask me. I'm no expert, right? But why did he only ask Jeffrey Hinton?
Well, what's the impact of that? Does that raise the possibility that humans will actually lose their ability to control the planet?
Why is it always about winning or losing with Americans? Right? There's only winning or losing. We either win control of our planet or we lose control of our planet. What about coexistence, where AI actually makes our lives better? What about that?
And if that becomes a possibility, how do we stop that extraordinary threat? And let me just tell you, these are just some, underlying some, of the questions that must be answered as AI and robotics rapidly progress. So remember, these guys are spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. There are breakthroughs almost every day. AI and robotics are revolutionary technologies that will bring about an unprecedented transformation of society. Will these changes be positive and improve life for ordinary Americans, or will they be disastrous? In my view, Congress must act now. We've got to start answering these questions and other questions. We need to have a national discussion. This is a huge issue. And maybe the people on top, the billionaires who control the technology, want us to ignore it. But for the future of our world, our kids, the environment, etc., this is an issue that cannot be ignored. So we're going to work together. Look forward to hearing from you about this issue. But let's go forward in attempting to answer some of these questions. So thank you all very much.
All right. So that was it. I took my good old time covering this, an hour and a half. And the first 10 minutes, I made some errors. I'll have to cut that out before I post this online. I do agree with the final statement of Bernie Sanders. It should be a topic. People should be considering this. People should be considering, and I would like to stress this very much, considering all angles. And I can't stress this enough, and I think I've made that very clear throughout this video. I'm very, very, very disappointed with the angle Bernie Sanders took. He framed AI exclusively through the lens of risk, threat, danger, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and he only mentioned the word benefit once. And that is just doing a massive disservice to the potential of this technology. Imagine that 125 years ago, when Edison started to roll out electricity in the United States, people had only heard that electricity was dangerous, that it could kill you, that it would cost people's jobs, that it would pose an existential risk, that it could burn down your house. Imagine if that had been the message. And imagine if people had acted on that. The world today would be a very different place. We would still be living with candles. People would often burn alive in their houses, even more so than today, because they fell asleep with a candle next to them on a couch. We would not have television. We would not be informed what's going on in the world. We would not be able to call our loved ones at a distance as a result of having a mobile phone powered by electricity. We would not be able to watch YouTube and educate ourselves on topics for free. We would not be able to experience the incredible delight of living in a different world, like a computer game, where you can have different experiences that are not impossible in the real world. We would not be able to cook any kind of meal in the evening in our own kitchen the way we do today. And we would certainly not be able to drive or fly anywhere. Mr. Bernie Sanders disappointed me in the angle he decided to take on this conversation. It is disappointing to see that politicians, even intelligent people, respected people like Mr. Bernie Sanders, exclusively want to focus on the risk, threat, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of AI, and completely kind of failing to at least mention the incredible potential upside for humanity and the incredible benefits that it's already bringing us, the incredible positive disruption and acceleration of medical science, for example, that is a result of this, and of energy technologies and so many other things. But there you have it. This is just the way it is. So all I can do is make these videos and try and compensate for that. That's it for now. I have so much to do today, but I just wanted to get this video done and out and recorded and to do this live stream, even if only 2 people watched it. That's it for now. Thank you so much. Mr. Metaverse signing off. And like to say in the Netherlands, see you later.